In this video, I'm going to tell you about the new expansion to Warcry, Monsters and Mercenaries, and see if it's something that you're actually interested in. I'm going to apologize in advance. I am still kind of coming down from a cold that I've had for the last 2 weeks, and so I still kind of sound a bit stuffed up and nasally, and I apologize. So I got a package from Games Workshop a couple of weeks back, and it was this new book for Warcry, Monsters and Mercenaries. Now, I got it like on a Thursday, and then all the videos that people could, they say, well, don't talk about it until this time on Saturday. And so I got it on Thursday, and I was sick, and so I didn't make any video about it like right away when you could first make videos about it. But the thing is that also, getting the book so quickly, I kind of was like, I want to be able to kind of chew on this a little bit. Not literally chew on this, but go through and like really understand what's going on and see if it's something that I even really want to talk about. Because the thing that's very interesting about this is that this fell very quickly on the heels of the release of Warcry. Warcry came out at the beginning of August, like the 3rd, I think, of August. And this just came out in stores like last week, I think. So, this is a very fast follow to the big release. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of interesting. One thing that I thought was a little interesting as well is the fact that the book is so thin. If I do this, you can't see it, but it is a very thin book. Now, that being said, there's a lot going on in this book. I'm not going to lie. I've heard people online say stuff like, well, why didn't they just put this into the main core rule book for Warcry that you got in the box, or if you bought it separately or whatever? And the thing is that I don't think that that would have worked out. This stuff that's in here is really, for lack of a better term, this is all advanced rules. This is pretty advanced rules. It really changes the game of Warcry. And if they would have released it in the base book, I think no matter how many times you put advanced rules, don't use this unless you really want to, people will look at it and they'll go, I don't know, that's a lot of stuff. That's more advanced than I want to go with. Because when you lump it all together in one book, people think, oh, this is all together and it has to be played together. And this is really an expansion, but I really think a pretty cool one. Now, it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It adds in monsters and mercenaries. Now, you may say to yourself, well, that's weird because, there's a whole bunch of different, warbands out there that are already available for this game. There are the 6 chaos ones that they've released, with all the bird dudes and iron golems and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also all the warbands that they released for all the other factions that you can use from normal Age of Sigmar. You can take Stormcast folks, Daughters of Cain, fish people, not really fish people. I wish they were fish people, but they're actually just wet elves. A bunch of different orcs, bunch of different undead, all that kind of stuff. And you can use those folks in your warbands if you don't want to use the chaos warbands that are made specifically for Warcry. And I think that's really cool. It's an interesting mix between like Necromunda, where you have to pretty much use the models that they make for Necromunda, and Kill Team, where you just use 40k models that you already potentially have or that you can just pick up already. It's a neat mixture being able to use the both of them. And this expands on this because everything that's in this book, there's no new models in this book for the most part. It's predominantly all models that you potentially already have. And that's, I think, also a really smart plan in the design of this book. So the book starts out, and it is Monsters and Mercenaries, and it is predominantly a little bit of fluff at the beginning. You've got some talk about savage might and stories about things, and then they get into about almost 10 pages after all of the fluff. 10 pages of what they call bestial glory, and this stuff is all just pictures. That's just basically pictures of models that you can use now with this expansion. It is like seriously like a hobby section. It's not in that they're saying, oh, this is how you paint these guys and this is how you do it. It's just showing you all the different models and the setups and all kinds of cool stuff like that. Here's big giant beast monster dude and a bunch of orc folks and undead. And it shows all the different models that you can use and add in to your armies. Now, there's 2 different types, obviously. There's monsters and there's mercenaries. The monsters, there's really only 8 main monsters that you can bring into the game. And you can't just in a matched play game say, oh, hey, I'm taking a chaos gargant or giant or whatever they call them these days. Or, oh, I'm just going to be adding in a terrorgeist or something like that into my game. although I will be doing that soon because I'm working on both of those models. They're both currently on my work desk. They've been there before this even came out, so for me, honestly, it was serendipitous that those models were already kind of either half-built or primed or, you know, somewhere in the middle. But you can't just grab those models, throw them into match play, and mess things up. And mess things up is a strong word. I've heard some people online saying, well, this is going to mess up the tournament, you know, scene for Warcry. First of all, I don't know. Is there going to be a Warcry matched play tournament scene? I guess there can be. But to me, the game seemed really simple in that aspect. And again, it's maybe just because it gets a little bit more into the chess aspect, you know, where placement is so important and all that kind of stuff. For me, I see this game still, the main Warcry game is really all about the campaign play, and that's where this book really shines. So if you want to play with monsters, something big in a game, it's not just throw it into your warband and let's go. It's something that you slip into the middle part, let's say, of one of your campaigns. You're playing a campaign and you decide, I want to play a game against a monster. So you bring in this monster and you say, I have this Terrorgeist. I think it's pretty cool. I want to fight the Terrorgeist. Your opponent now gets to run the Terrorgeist and you get to fight against it. So if you pick a monster that maybe is like, maybe a potentially kind of like weak to your, you know, army, you're still playing against an opponent who is trying to stop you, and they're using the monster to try to do that. Here's the benefit. If you play against this monster and you win, now you can bring that monster into your warband for the rest of the campaign. But if you don't win, which is what your opponent is trying to get you to not do, if you don't win, then not only do you not get to bring the monster in, but you also have some territories and things that's like a downside. It's a negative to that. So you're kind of, if you want to go up against the biggest, scariest of the monsters, your opponent should be like, yes, let's do that, because they want to try to beat you with that monster. So it's an interesting way how you can't really sandbag and say, oh, I want to get like a cool monster, but it's not actually that powerful, and you could easily beat it, and now you have this monster that adds to your thing. You have, if you're beating up against a monster that's not all that great, okay, well, you're going to have all this not very great monster in your army then, if that's the case. And to be fair, most of these monsters are pretty equal. Like I said, there's a bunch of different ones. There's 8 different ones. But it's an interesting concept, I think, for being able to bring something very different into your campaign game, and the fact that you're playing against another player and they're running the monster and you're hoping to win so you get to keep the monster. It's a little bit like Pokemon, maybe a little bit. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and I think it was a smart design move, and it really adds a whole bunch of new stuff to the campaign already this quickly after the initial launch. Not everything, though, is a monster, though. You can also be fighting against the Hand of the Everchosen. And what that means is that you get to go up against a warband that includes a Varangard, and then a whole bunch of, you know, Chaos Warriors and Aspiring Champions and Cast Chosen and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And you basically build a warband that you want to then bring into your warband to some degree, and your opponent gets to play it against you and hopefully beat you. And I think this is also a super cool concept, because I have a Varangard, actually I have 3 of them, that are already done and painted, that I'm really looking forward to bringing into this game, bringing it into the missions and seeing what I can do with it. Beyond the monsters, there's also 50 different mercenaries. So there are so many different models you can decide to bring in that it really allows you to be able to do something even more than just what they call the fated quests, which is, you know, these fated quests give you all kinds of special powers and things like that. So you can do all these different types of mid-campaign kind of add-on games that allow you to maybe get a special power for your leader, or potentially some sort of cool, like what do you call it, like an artifact or something like that. Or you can just go for, you know, I want to have a monster, or you can just decide that you want to add some pretty cool folks to your list. So like here for Night Haunt, you can bring the Knight of Shrouds in, the Karen Wraith, the Lord Executioner, the Spirit Torment, Tomb Banshee. I've got the Tomb Banshee on my paint table right now, as a matter of fact. She's half done. I've got the Karen Wraith, he's ready to go. I've also got over here for Legions of Nagash, I've got a finished Necromancer and a White King. So, you know, all of these different types of things that you can just start bringing into your models, you know, for every different faction, for all 4 of the main orders or alliances, you can bring in different mercenaries to your thing. Now, if you're playing matched play or open play, you can only bring in one, and you still have to pay the points and all that kind of stuff, and your opponent kind of does the same. If you're playing narrative play, then it's a much different thing. It depends on how many territories you have in your narrative, and then you can bring in different folks and that kind of stuff. So it gives you all these extra options in this one book for both open play, matched play to some degree, but definitely for narrative and campaign play. That's really where this book shines, which I still think to this day, that's really where Warcry shines. Warcry in matched play, I'm sure it's fun, you know, I mean, but really campaign play seems to be where it's at, because like I said in the video that I originally did about Warcry, Pachow, half that book easily is campaign stuff. So if campaign is really the thing that they're pushing for Warcry, which I think is great, because the one thing I kind of wish there was more of in Kill Team was a little bit more campaign stuff. There's a little bit of campaign stuff at the end of that book, but that's about it. If they could kind of, you know, expand the campaign stuff for Kill Team, I think that would be awesome. But until that itch gets scratched by Games Workshop, I think that the campaign stuff for Warcry, especially once you add Monsters and Mercenaries, is really exciting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how people start talking and building stories with both the normal campaign rules and the add-on stuff like this. I can't wait to start adding some giants and terrorgeists and Varangard and all kinds of different things and mercenaries and stuff like that to my warbands that I'm currently building for Warcry. And I just love the fact that I can grab some of these models that I've already even got done and just bring them in and say, okay, now I've got this new cool, you know, Nurgle dude, and he's a mercenary and part of my army. It's a really smart move on their part to allow you to be able to bring in these different kind of one-off characters to put into your army, because it allows you to, again, buffet style, pick and choose and go, I've always wanted the Tomb Banshee. I always thought she was a cool model. Boom, now bring her in, stick her into one of your death armies, and there you go. She's, even though she's not necessarily, you know, in the right area, maybe she's, you know, you've got mostly flesh eater courts, but that doesn't matter. As long as she's death, you can bring in as a mercenary. As long as they stick within the right alliance, you can bring the mercenaries in. That gives you a lot more variability and be able to move things around a lot more and use a lot of different types of characters that normally you wouldn't be able to. And I think that's really kind of interesting. So admittedly, it's a pretty thin little book. It came out very close on the heels of the launch of Warcry, but it's for people who are really interested in the campaign play. So if you're really interested in the open play and the match play, there's stuff in here for you, don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't have made sense to add this, in my opinion, into the main book. The fact that this is advanced rules, the rules themselves don't really change so much, but the fact that there's so much more, there's so many more missions, there's so many more different things into the way you play the game in this, I think it's a really smart idea for them to keep it separate. It's 25 bucks. I kind of wish it maybe wasn't quite that expensive, but you know, I guess 20 would have made a little bit more sense to me, but there is a lot of stuff in here. So take a look at it, probably at your local store, and see what you think. If you're playing a bunch of narrative or campaign type games in Warcry, I think it's pretty much an auto ad. You really want to take a look at this at the very least, and then go from there. Just the fact that it allows me to expand my kind of campaign ideas already for Warcry beyond what I thought I was going to be able to do really kind of makes me sort of excited about the book.